What's up, everybody? Waiting on our man Connor to join us, and we'll get that. Hopefully, he'll be here shortly, so we can do the interview today. For some reason, Kick is being a pain in the butt. So let me. Don't know why, but Kick, for whatever reason, is not really not really working like it ought to. Like it ought work, but it is not. All right. So Connor is taking care of a couple of things, and he'll be on. And let's see. Why is this? Kick is just so weird. So let's see. All right, I'll have to solve Kick later because I let's see. What's up, the Steel Man? I see you out there. Not a ton of people. I did drop the link to the or pardon me, I didn't drop the link. I also have this running over on the pardon me, an Unreasonable Man channel as well. So looks like the Steel Man is over on An Unreasonable Man. So you might want to go over to Gun Prattle. Just saying. Yeah, all right. Yeah, I'll have to. Got something jacked up over on Kick. So no touching of guns today. That's unfortunate. That's okay. So Connor will be here shortly. We're going to talk today about, he's been a police officer. He's been a he's been in the military. I believe he was a Marine. We're going to talk about that. And we're going to talk about, where his viewpoints on the Second Amendment are and what he does if he, how he shoots, what he shoots. Since I can't get Kick working and I can't send everybody over to Kick, which is weird, it ought to be working, but it is in fact not working. So I'll have to figure that out, but we won't be able to touch firearms today. What's up, So Loud? Good afternoon to you. If you don't mind, run over to Gun Prattle. That's where we're all going to be today. I did both, but Gun Prattle is where we're actually at. I'll drop the link here for that. This is where we're at. There you go. What's up? You refuse to head over to Gun Prattle? Okay, Anson. All right. I heard a Discord bell there. Red. Oh, I already sent you a link. I already sent you the link. Let me give it to him again. Just click. I sent him the link earlier, but I don't know. I don't think he's used this software before, so we'll figure it out. We'll help him through it. What's up, So Loud? Good to see you. Good to see you. Confluence. What is this? Confluence fan club? That's got to be Anson Knowles. Has to be. Oh, I don't see you. Am I in the wrong? I am not in the wrong one. Huh. Oh, wait. He's using OBS, but that shouldn't be a big deal. Anyway, Viking Paradigm, I see you out there. Good to see you, my man. I see So Loud is here. Steelman dropped by. I'm not sure if he's still here. And Anson Knowles is out there lurking around. Good to see you. Good to see you. Confluence fan club is hilarious. That's just awesome. All right, let's see if I can help him get through this. If we have to, we can do it through Discord, but Discord's audio is always really weird. Anson's already on the attack. All right. Huh. I did. That's like above. It's 2, 3, 4 years. You should be able to clear. The dog studio. Yeah. Okay. We're having some technical issues. Let me generate a new link. Yep, there he is. There he is. Right as I was generating a new link.
Yeah, no, No problem. Give me 1 second. I got something else running in the background. Let me go ahead and exit that and
Man.
come onto this screen. And can you hear me and see me okay?
Yeah, I can hear and see you fine. Looks great.
Excellent.
Looks great.
Cool. And then I am live on my end, just to give you a heads
Yeah,
up.
we're live. We're live here too. Unfortunately, for whatever reason, Kick lately has just been very erratic about whether it actually works or not. So, not live on Kick. So, no gun handling today because
Okay.
YouTube,
Okay.
right? Yeah. So,
No problem.
yeah, but because usually what I do is I shut down YouTube and everybody goes over to Kick and then we can play with guns. But Kick, for whatever reason, is not playing with me today. So I've got to figure out what I've
That's
done there.
okay. Number one, I'm live on YouTube, and then number two, I did go shooting recently, and so
Mm.
my father-in-law has a majority of my firearms.
Okay.
So I don't even have the coolest things to show you right now,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Yeah, that's okay. So this is my show Gun Prattle, where we talk about all things firearms and firearm related. Mostly, I deal with competition shooting, which is kind of probably not something you've done a ton of, but you've been obviously you're in the same political activism, whatever space that I tend to frequent, along with uh, you've been a Marine, you've been a police officer, and I'm assuming you are a firearms enthusiast. So why not?
I
Why
know
not
enough
have?
to get myself in trouble.
There you go. There you go. Most people know less than that, so that's good. Um, so, what? Give us an overview of who. I kind of give you a quick rundown, but you can give a better insight into who you are and what you do and why you do it and all of that.
Yeah. So the way I introduce myself on the internet, my name's Connor. I'm a science fiction, politics, and philosophy nerd, a Marine Corps and law enforcement veteran, and I would argue a real Republican. The reason why I do that intro is because my most popular content on the internet is Warhammer 40K, which is like an uber violent science fiction fantasy setting that is created by a company called Games Workshop. And they have books, they got TV shows, they got movies, they got little miniatures that you paint and you fight on a tabletop, and their lore is amazing. Like the lore of the universe is amazing. So I've been breaking that down for a while now, and it's one of my most lucrative endeavors online. The second most lucrative endeavor I have online is I do talk about politics. I would say from a military and law enforcement background, and I would say that like the Bush era Republicans, the Romney Republicans, even Dan Crenshaw, Nikki Haley. I'm fans of all these people, and I understand that they're kind of on the outs of the Republican Party. But I do feel like a lot of Republicans have effectively given up or not been thoughtful
Mm.
about the principles that were supposed to guide the party, and therefore arguably have done some betrayals to the principles that were supposed to lead the party. But I know we're focused on guns, so let's talk about
Sure.
guns.
Yeah, yeah.
um,
We'll talk about
in
guns.
Yeah, so in reference to my Marine Corps training, I think the Marine Corps rifle training is some of the best on the planet. We effectively handled a rifle for a full week before we were given ammunition, and
Mm.
we were given like training on sight picture, sight alignment, posture in the prone, posture in the sitting, posture in the standing, fundamentals of marksmanship, how to use iron sights. We were given all of that for a week
Mm.
before we were given ammunition. And
Mhm.
then when we were given ammunition, we were taught to fire at the 200, 300, and 500 in various positions. And then, obviously, like close quarters battle, we also did blank fire adapter training for close urban firefights, enough to get in trouble, not enough to be proficient. And then with law enforcement, I do think that I got really, really, really good pistol training. Some of
Mm.
it was dangerous and some of it was stupid based
Mm.
off of my military background. But at the same time, I feel like I'm a above average shot with a pistol. I'm an above average shot
Mm.
with a rifle, and I value both of those training tools. And like you said, I'm predictably a gun enthusiast as well.
Mm. Okay. Okay. Um, so, um, pardon me. That's all interesting. Have you ever competed at all?
No, but I have a friend. He's a former infantryman from the
Mm-hmm.
army, and he competed. And
Mm-hmm.
then learning the gaps in knowledge between my very basic target over there, blast until it stops moving,
Right.
versus his let's do calisthenics and let's do burpees and let's do sprints and then let's try to fire accurately under stress
Sure.
in a timed environment with reloads and malfunctions
Mm-hmm.
as a part of your performance metric.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it was eye opening. I would love to compete, but unfortunately, competition is very expensive.
It is fairly expensive. I know, a lot of people who kind of like, well, they'll do pistol matches only, or they'll do, that they try. Pardon me. They try and economize, I guess you would say, as much as possible because it is expensive, and there's a um, I wouldn't say a disconnect, but there's like a mentality change between the competitive shooter and people who work with guns, right? Um, and they a lot of times sometimes it kind of overlaps and sometimes it doesn't. I got a quick video. This is I think I do anyway. Did I? Yeah, I got it right here. Let me see if this is just me messing around with this was actually at the event that I had back in November for DebateCon. After the event was over on Monday, some of the guys and I were still in town, and we did a range day. And this is just something quick that was thrown together, and we'll just roll with it now.
Let's go.
Yes, it was like really slow and a little awkward. The mag change was good, but and again, we're just messing around, right?
Well,
But
I would say slow is steady and steady is fast is the way that
yeah,
I was trained. Where if you're gonna look cool, but you're gonna like run and you're gonna make mistakes and you're
right.
gonna shoot your fingers off and you're gonna trip over yourself and all that kind of stuff, then that's not good to. You could look cool for like a
Yeah.
slow motion YouTube video, but if you blow your fingers off and have to go to the ER,
Mhm.
that's not going to be cool for anybody. So basically, like yeah,
Pardon
sure, get faster over time, but practicing good fundamentals is
me.
first.
I don't know if you know this, but my entire background is in racing, specifically sports car racing. And I did a little bit of other stuff, just peripherally, like street racing, drag racing, NASCAR, off-road racing, all that kind of stuff. We did the Pikes Peak Hill climb several times, but my main focus was always professional road racing, mostly with Porsche, but also with Mazda and to a lesser degree with Dodge and Chevrolet. But it was always interesting to hear the guys who were so. And in my world, there was two levels: pro and not pro. There is no in between. It's either you're pro or you're just not pro. I mean, it doesn't matter how good you are as an amateur or a Sunday guy or whatever, you're just not pro. And there's a way
Mhm.
that pros do things. And that leap is something that people have a problem with because there's little things like this. In amateur racing, there's this whole idea of slow in, fast out, right? And in pro racing, there's if you tell somebody and that with pro racing, if they like you and they're honest with you, they'll tell you slow is just slow. There is no slow in, fast out. There's only as fast as you can go in and then as fast as you can go out. There is no
Yeah,
slow. There's nowhere that's slow.
it's
So
the it's the risk of getting killed or injured, though.
right. And
That's
that's
obviously
it.
it.
That's a
And
difference.
and it's also like it's a Jordan Peterson thing too, which is you're not you're not trying to win every single battle that you're a member of. You're trying to win as many battles as possible across the duration of time. And so if you take the mentality of fast in, fast out, which is probably true, and if you're a pro, that's probably how you need to be because you're competing with the best of the best.
Yeah.
But there are so many people, including people in the firearms community, including people in law enforcement, including people in firearms, including people in the competitive firearms scene, or Western three gun or whatever.
Any competition.
Yeah,
Any competition.
there's so much ego wrapped up in this that it's very common, and I don't know how common this is in racing. But there's
the first thing you do is kill your ego.
Well, but that's the thing is, if you're unwilling to do that as a rookie, then oftentimes what happen is you do something stupid and dangerous and you hurt yourself or kill yourself or cost a bunch of money. And so the reason why they say slow is steady and steady is fast isn't so you stay at steady and slow. It's to get people to be comfortable making moves in a proficient way before picking up the speed.
Yeah. So, and I've, I mean, we consider, I mean, the racing analogy is really good because we used to say, we used to also laugh when people would say, well, safety's first. Safety first, guys. Safety first. Safety is like a distant third. An argument can be made for fourth or fifth. If it wasn't, then we wouldn't be doing what we're doing.
Right. Yeah. Risk is a part of the game, obviously.
The reality is that we are accepting a level of risk.
Yeah.
Regardless of whether it's guns, cars, knives, bows, doesn't matter. We're accepting a level of risk. And that level of risk means that we as human beings determine that A, the prize is worth it. And B, that we're willing to come back with a steering wheel, right? Like that's at the end of the day, you're willing to write off a car. I actually have a crash out video. Let me show you this, and we'll and I'll walk you through that.
Oh, by the way, just sharing, I'm a huge fan of Mazda.
Oh wait, that's the wrong one. Yeah, I did Mazda for a long time. Is that the right one? No, that's the wrong one. Sorry, I apologize.
No problem.
Very bad with very bad sometimes with video. But at any rate, so I think I got involved with Mazda. Obviously, everybody gets involved with Mazda early on, and because the answer is always Miata. All right, so we're gonna do here.
So I tell them you don't want to put it in there and then like drop your bolt or do it really
This is rifle and pistol, and this is actually this starts out pretty good.
Someone got you for $2.
And this is a PCC. This is a 9mm carbine for anyone curious why there's no recoil and why the mags look funny.
Your friends don't. Actually, I should have done my pistol first, but that's all right. Yeah, I got a mag here somewhere. There we go.
Only 4 stages.
Well, it's going to be 6 stages.
And the dot's on, so that's a plus.
5.
Well, one of the things you notice
Dot's on, that's a plus. All right.
Wrong button. And one of the things you notice there is as I rotated the gun and you could audibly hear the safety click. One of the rules is that the gun has to be on safe when you start. And the ROs don't always check for it, but I just force a habit. Every single time you'll see me do that. I will rotate the gun, and I want them to not only audibly hear it, but I want them to visually see me put that gun on safe. Because if there's something else that happens later, I don't want to get DQ'd for not having my gun on safe at the start.
No. And then also, I just want to share
wondering why I'm doing some of the things I'm doing.
If we get taken, sometimes YouTube, I've had this problem in the past. With firearms content, if you're in a live format, sometimes they'll take it down because the algorithm assumes that
this is
you
on
yourself
YouTube,
are shooting.
Yeah, this is on YouTube, so they know.
Okay.
I've actually run this footage a lot. Yeah, I've run this footage a lot.
Belt.
Stock on belt.
Are you ready?
Mm-hmm.
Stand by.
It's not too bad so far.
Yeah.
This is good. Now we're at the train wreck right here. All right, so I think I have to work the problem. Trying to figure out what's going on. What's happened is a cartridge has come apart in the gun.
Oh no!
And the bolt won't go forward. So I get enough to get the bolt to go forward. Then I put the gun back together. Now I'm on the clock here.
Right.
Ah, you bastard.
Guns back together. By the way, that's pretty quick, but it won't go in the battery because there's a bullet in the chamber, and it won't go in the battery. Now I realize this. I throw the whole thing away. You just worked a problem, right?
Yeah.
Like wrong mag.
Wrong mag.
Results are clear.
Well, I certainly hope I'm
Yeah,
finished.
clear, hammer down.
So there you go.
Yeah.
So that's, every single time, everything I did there, I was always safe. The gun was always pointed where it needed to be pointed. Everything was good but I wasn't being slow about anything. Like everything was like.
Yeah, no, you got to make moves. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you got to. But again, this is one of those things where I go, safety is a very distant third in my mind at that point. Like I'm on the verge of being unsafe, but I'm still being safe.
Well, I think the key things, especially when you learn like the firearm safety rules, right? So treat every weapon as if it were loaded. Never point at anything you don't intend to shoot. Keep your finger straightened off of the trigger until you're ready to fire. Then I modified the rules, and weirdly enough, I think this applies in a civilian context more. Know what's in front of your target and behind it. And the truth is that like once you hit a flow state when you're shooting, it's kind of hard to. You don't keep all four rules in your brain at all times, but you do have instincts. For instance, like the barrel, generally speaking, being pointed down or up or at a target. And if something you don't want to shoot gets in the vicinity of something you do want to shoot, you drop your barrel away. Those are all instincts that you develop over time. And so that's kind of where for me, I agree. And one of the things that I do think that was interesting that you said is that safety is third. It's like, yeah, if we what's all the liberal like quotes about like firearms ownership? It's like the second you own a firearm, the chances of you killing yourself go up by 300%. And it's like, yeah, but have you tried shooting a gun before? Because it's fucking amazing. So,
well, I mean, the thing is like, I've watched people get really, really badly hurt because they literally fell off a roof because they didn't know how to strap into a safety harness properly or any of these things, right? So, I mean, I think that as humans, we have this, the safety first mantra falls flat because safety's often not the first thing that we need to do. And we don't act like that. We say that because it sounds good, right? It's a good soundbite. It's great for people who are scared of things to say, well, safety first. But the reality is that if you're going down rapids, you're not safe. Safety's like the eighth thing on your mind at that point, right? Like it's like we don't care anymore about safety.
But the thing about it is, and by the way, like I'm not trying to debate you about gun safety or whatever, but I think the reason why I don't mind an overemphasis on safety as a part of the culture is because race culture, and by the way, this is an interesting thing that I think we should peel apart a little bit. So race culture versus work culture in reference to vehicles and in reference to guns probably has a lot of parallels. So for instance, let's say that you're a professional commercial truck driver, right? There's probably all sorts of things you need to know. The mechanics, what can go wrong with your vehicle, how to navigate road safety hazards, all that kind of stuff. But your emphasis is going to be on not fucking up in such a way that kills people. Whereas obviously with a race, you're optimizing, you do know all those mechanics and road hazard rules, but the optimization is towards speed and performance. And then I think with the gun culture too, when it comes to law enforcement and when it comes to the military, we oftentimes know in law enforcement and in the military that realistically we're taking 19 to 40-year-old young men and women, we're giving them enough knowledge to go out into the street or go on deployment, that there are going to be people who perform extremely well to the point that they have the talent requisite to be a racer in a gun context. But then we also know that there's a lot of dumb people who are going to fuck shit up. That's going to hurt themselves or kill themselves or hurt other people or kill people in a way that's not intended. And then therefore the emphasis becomes safety because number one, you know, having the guilt of accidentally killing or hurting somebody when you weren't prepared for that as a consequence is devastating psychologically. Then likewise, killing somebody that you didn't want to kill is likewise psychologically devastating. And all you have to do is really check out a show like Generation Kill, for instance, which is about Marine Corps Special Forces deploying during the Iraq War. And you can see these are effectively like the race car. These are racers who have been trained by the government, but because of the context of warfare, their racing instincts aren't always appropriate. And so what ends up happening is their race car instincts kill civilians sometimes. And they just have to, like, because the mission needs to go on, they just kind of shrug their shoulders and keep it moving.
Right. Yeah. No, I think that's a fair assessment. I think that's a fair assessment. And I think that it's always an interesting dynamic when we start talking about doing things, especially when we start talking about doing things fast, or just accelerating, because I know that in a lot of public servant roles, it's slow everything down, right? Slow down, make very good decisions. You've got all of these things to consider. And the reality is that then you put the guy in a situation where he has to absolutely react and think quickly. And oftentimes it's the exact wrong decision. And one of the things in competitive shooting that there's a guy who wrote a book. It's worth everybody should read. There are two books I think that most people should read that they have no idea that they should read. One is With Winning in Mind by Lanny Barnes. And it talks about how to accept defeat, or, you know, how maybe you had the absolute best performance of your life, but somebody just happened to have a slightly better performance than you that day. And tomorrow it could have been the complete opposite. So don't get down in your, don't get down in the dumps about it. And it's a really great book. He was an Olympic marksman, Olympic shooter, and trained some of the best in the world. And so Lanny Basham, With Winning in Mind, it's a great book, wonderful. The other one is Practical Shooting Beyond the Fundamentals by Brian Enos. And Brian Enos, it's almost like a Zen book. It's very Zen when you read it, because he's talking about how, like, mostly that, you can visualize every target, but you shouldn't. But if you're thinking while you're shooting, you're slow. Like, there's no thinking while shooting. And how he likens it to dividing the task between your conscious and subconscious. And he likens it to driving your car to work every day, right? You get in the car, you know your way, you know how to get to work, right? So you don't, you just put yourself on autopilot, and the whole time you're sitting there thinking about phone calls you need to make, or these other tasks that are yes, no decisions, right? Whereas driving a car is not a bunch of yes, no decisions. It's your subconscious just knows how to do it. It knows, and think about it. People drive at 80 miles an hour, 5 feet away from another idiot driving 80 miles an hour.
Yeah.
And you're not thinking about the idiot next to you driving at 80 miles an hour. You're thinking
it'll be
about
fine.
What phone call I've got to make. You're thinking about, I hope that so-and-so's not at the office today. They're such a fucking drag. Whatever it is, right? Like, you're not thinking about, but you ought to be thinking about that, because you're in a 3,000-pound death machine. Yeah. 5 feet away from another 3,000-pound death machine driven by somebody that you don't know. And so it's an interesting it's a thought exercise to say, well, you don't even think about it, and you can't name the cars you pass. You can't say, well, I passed a white car at this stop sign. You can't do it accurately, because it's all subconscious. Your subconscious is what's driving you, and your conscious mind is making those yes, no decisions.
What's interesting about the working, there's actually two things. I probably need to start taking notes. But what's interesting about, like, working in a security field like law enforcement is the hybridization of the conscious and subconscious processes. Because, like you said, most of the time you're letting your subconscious drive. And also there's a famous saying in security work, which is you don't rise to the levels of your ideals, you fall to the level of your training.
Yes.
And but what's interesting is when you have so many input variables going into your calculations for like risk assessment, like your brain just goes into overdrive, and you do start analyzing things about like, what was the color of that car? What was their license plate? What did the driver look like? And these things could be conscious, unconscious. But the truth is that you're just firing all these thoughts so quickly that the hybridization of conscious and unconscious process is so different that you just feel really, really, if you're vigilant, you feel really alive because you're so sucked into the moment because every detail matters. Whereas I could see how a flow state in race shooting would be ideal. And also even a flow state during a violent encounter is almost physiologically necessary. Your ability to have a conscious thought in like a high adrenaline situation is nil. And you kind of realize that you got substantially dumber under adrenaline because effectively you're ready for a fight. And if you'll indulge me one more point.
Yeah.
So one of the cool things about, there's a guy named Hutch. He's a liberal creator who didn't like guns, very pro gun control, but he picked up his firearms recently and he started training with them. And he's like, I didn't realize how much of this process relies upon like almost like mechanical meditation, right? Like you have to get your skeleton right, and you have to get your muscles right, and you have to be firm enough to hold the pistol but not loose enough that you drop it, and you have to line up your sight picture and your sight alignment, and if you're really going for accurate shots you need to breathe properly, and you need to have good trigger discipline and all this kind of stuff. So what I found was really interesting about working in the security services and then being under the influence of adrenaline a few times is that I think the human physiological and psychological system is basically built for fist fighting a saber-toothed tiger. It's not built for running precision machinery. And so when you're in a situation where you're manipulating precision machinery, basically a pistol, but you feel like you're under attack from a saber-toothed tiger, you have these inverted impulses of I'm being attacked and I need to fist fight somebody right now, but I also need to be precise with tiny machinery in order to survive this encounter. And that confluence is very interesting to me.
Yeah. I think it's the ability to slave certain tasks to your subconscious that makes a difference between people who survive or win and people who don't. And so I like to use the example of if I shoot a stage and I shoot it really well when I'm in my game, right? Like I'm getting back into this. I had some injuries and I had to work through those and get back into it. And so I'm not there yet, but when I am in there, I don't see my conscious mind is only maneuvering me through the course of fire. Point A, point B, I stop here, I do this, I do that. All the decisions of when to pull the trigger are made by my subconscious mind, because my mind knows what the sight picture needs to be, how much I need to respect that target at that distance, whether I can just snap to or if I need to actually slow down and really get into it. My mind knows better than I do what the sight picture should be, right? Because it's done it so many times, it's so many reps, and it knows. And if when I start getting in the way of that process, that's when things go awry. And if you ask me at the end of a really well shot stage, what do I think I missed or anything like that, I won't be able to tell you. But if you give me 5 minutes and my conscious brain catches up to my subconscious brain, then I can tell you exactly, well, I pulled left on that target, or I came into the position and I wasn't stable, but I went ahead and pulled the trigger anyway because it was the best I was going to get, or whatever it was. I can tell you exactly shot for shot, exactly what I did. But during it,
why do you think gunfights devolve into horrific mag dumps under pressure so often? And I'll tell you from my perspective, it's because the not only are you under the influences of adrenaline, but then also, like you said, you can kind of get a vibe for this is about good enough to let it go, and I'll probably hit what I'm going for. And then there's also the vibes of like, ooh, I sent that one and I shouldn't have. And so like you can kind of tell that when you're shooting for a while. And what's funny is that under the, in security work, not that this has happened to me personally, but obviously it's been a consideration the entire time, is that it's a two-way shooting range.
Yes.
So not only are you lining up your shot on your target, but your target, if they're aware of you, they're lining up their shot on you. So the question is not only who is going to be most accurate, the question is who's going to put rounds on target first. And so I think the reason why a lot of people default to, let's say there's like marksmanship practices that you should do in order to have a good shot. The reason why people default to 60%, 50% of good marksmanship practices when they're in like a security life or death situation is because their conscious mind is like, if I'm not fast enough, I'm going to get smoked. So this is good enough, send it. And then they just send as many rounds as possible in the hopes that 30% of them hit the target.
So it's interesting you say that. I have a friend of mine. He's been on the show. His name's Brian Nelson. We did a 6-hour interview.
Ooh.
Yeah. So he's a grandmaster in USPSA in several different divisions. He's been shooting since he was really little. Now he's really big. Him and his dad, his dad developed a company called PRATTLE because of him, which does all of the scoring and it's a software that almost every match in the country uses. And now they've actually, his day job now is he makes Marines more lethal. Nice. He enhances the lethality of Marines, basically using a hybrid model of competition and tactical training types. And just basically they changed how the Marines train with firearms. And it is about the most accurate hits in the least amount of time. And that's what they do. And so when you saw me shooting those in the second video, that's at a match is an organization called PCSL, Practical Competition Shooting League, and it's run by a friend of mine, Max, and it's developed Max and Brian developed it more or less together as while Brian was helping the Marines enhance lethality, they were using competition to test their theories. They were using competitive shooters, and I actually shot a match where we all had to wear selected people had to wear wrist the iWatch or whatever. The
biometric trackers.
Yeah, the biometric trackers. I forget which ones they used. I'm drawing a blank on it, but we would have to wear those. And before you shot a stage, there'd be some side drill, and one would be that you would start with your scope on max. Or pardon me, the least amount of magnification possible, like you would if you were just walking along, and you would have to drop down, load the weapon, and obviously you'd have to adjust the scope, and then put 3 rounds on a target at about 300 yards. And then you had to do it like 3 or 4 times, and they were tracking your heart rate, time, and the time to first shot. They were tracking a lot of different things, and it gave a good baseline of what that information needed to look like so that they could target it for Marines. And then there were other things too, but it's one of the things they did is they developed a target, and it's the areas of like in competition shooting, like your normal target, the areas of effectiveness are pretty big, honestly. Right, like the A zone's pretty big, C zone's pretty big, and the D zone is like, it's like
you can kind of see it in the background right there. You can see the D.
The A is like Yeah, so the A zone, which you can't actually see there, that you just see the headshot. So they've actually got now the target has what's called the T zone, and it's literally the T zone that
the medulla oblongata.
Yeah, exactly.
The brainstem. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, and so it the T zone, and then it has a very small A zone, and if you can
well, I should tell chat because they might not know about that, but effectively with the Marine Corps in particular, we're trained on center mass shots, multiple center mass shots, because that's what you're most likely to get. However, there's higher degrees of training that they told us about, including like Mozambique drills, which there's an entire history here. I'll try not to be too long-winded. But basically, there was a rumor of like a Rhodesian soldier of fortune who was doing something in Mozambique, Africa, wherever the hell that is, and his rifle jammed, so he went to his pistol, and he was trying to take down a guy, but he noticed that his first shot didn't work. So what he started doing was 2 to the chest, 1 to the head.
Yep.
And so they started training Marines. Bear in mind, this was 20 years ago. But they started training us on controlled pairs and hammer pairs, which is basically 2 to the chest. And then they also called it like a follow-up shot or something like that, which is a shot to the head. So effectively 20 years ago now, which I can't believe it's been that long. But 20 years ago now, we were effectively, they would call out hammer, they would call out controlled. They would call out, 2 to the chest, 1 to the head, or they would call out Mozambique. And so effectively all you do right there is with a 30-round mag, you just practice getting on target, putting 2 to the chest, putting 1 in the head over and over and over again, so you can build the muscle memory, and then reloading on your own when you're walking through that course of fire. So you can basically have muscle memory with this shit. But wrapping it up, the T zone is obviously basically like the brain stem at the bottom where your skull matches your spine, but it's also like the bottom of your brain. So if you snap that, it's basically lights out instantaneously if you hit that area. And then the A zone that we're talking about in reference to vital organs, I'm assuming the A zone is probably around the heart and lungs. I would have to
basically
assume.
from about here down to about the bottom of your rib cage.
Right. So the whole, in my estimation, just knowing a little bit about physiology, the reason why you want to shoot there is because there's a shitload of vital organs, including the heart and lungs. And if you get double tapped or triple tapped in the heart or lungs, you're probably going down. You got like 10 to 20 seconds of consciousness. That consciousness is going to be wildly painful, and your ability to do something during that 10 to 20 second window is very diminished. Most people just go into shock and just die.
Yeah. And so, pardon me. And so, that's what the Marines are now, and they're a much reduced size target. If you're paying attention to the targets in the video I showed, the rifle targets are really really small. They're really reduced sized. And it's all, and again, that's his day job is to make Marines even more lethal than they already are, which, which is hilarious to say, enhancing the lethality of Marines, because that's not something most people think is needed.
Yeah, but I mean, it's better for the enemy though, because like the Marines or whatever, like by enhancing their lethality, you're increasing the speed and the civility with which Marines kill their enemies. Whereas if you leave it up to the Marines, they might do it slow. So I
mean, if you've read the Marine Combat Manual, basically it says throw grenades.
Right. It's grenade clear, grenade clear, grenade clear.
Grenades.
Yeah.
Got to clear stairwell.
Real quick, just an idea that I want to throw out there though, because it seems like you're pretty clicked up in the gun world. Yeah. I've been thinking there's been a huge cultural and market gap for liberal gun enthusiasm. And so what I mean by that is you and I and gun people in general tend to be libertarian, conservative, conservatarian, some blend of right wing.
Sure.
And there are liberal gun owners, there are leftist gun owners, but it's nowhere near. What's that?
The pink pistols?
Well, stuff like that. Or the Socialist Rifle Association or something, which is basically like half a dozen to a dozen LARPers who go out into Kentucky to shoot
That's
guns
true.
every now and then, right?
Yes.
So, so the point is that they're oftentimes when you get into these conversations with conservatarians, libertarians, and conservatives about firearms, it feels very pornographic. It feels very like we love it. Like we love to talk about this stuff. We love to talk about the technical details. We love to talk about combat physiology. We love to talk about time on target and all that kind of stuff. And so basically, I think that's quite intimidating to liberals and progressives who might be opening up the firearms because of their fear of the central government, which libertarians have largely been screaming about for decades. So if there were a bunch of liberals who were like, holy shit, turns out the Second Amendment is based, and I do want to keep and bear arms, but I don't know where to start, and conservatives are terrifying, so I don't know how to do this. I think there's a YouTube Pepperbox TV opportunity for gun content catered to skeptical liberals.
Yeah, so that's one of the reasons why I don't. This is separate from my political channel. And in fairness, we have a lot of like I know like especially like in California, I shot with a ton of people in California that are liberals, right? But they're gun enthusiasts. They shoot, you know. They're and they'll literally tell you, "I'm not a single issue voter." Right. And this was years ago. This is a long time ago. So, but certainly I think that there is that perception, and I think the perception can be, you know, the needle can be moved.
Well, and I think it'd be better. I think it'd be better for the gun enthusiast community if there was a plurality of politics where firearms was no longer viewed as the right wing wants unlimited firearms for schizophrenics and the left wants no firearms for anybody. If there was an overlap of gun ownership that was common in the left and the right, even if we didn't solve every political problem ever, I still think it would be better for the country.
Well, let me ask you. I don't want to get too political here, but what do you think about what's going on in the Supreme Court right now with the assault weapons bans? So basically,
are they pushing for them, or are they pushing to ban them as conceptions?
Basically the way it stands right now is it looks like the Supreme Court is selecting cases of weapon and or ammunition bans, and it looks like they're ruling that they're unconstitutional and do not stand up to scrutiny, and they're using a litany of cases. So this is something I think the Supreme Court has wanted to do for a long time, but they've never had the right number of cases in front of them or the right types of cases in front of them. And now I think they've created for themselves by pushing cases off and you know bringing them back so that they've kind of got a myriad of these separate types of cases that address a lot of the points. So it can't be like, well, yeah, you know, they ruled this way on this one case against AWBs, but it doesn't apply to us. And it looks to me like the Supreme Court, I mean, honestly, what I think Supreme Court is pissed over Bruin. I think that they thought they made themselves very clear in Bruin that if it's common use, you can't ban it. And states have continued to try and get these bans through. I just don't think I don't think it's in anyone's interest legally to piss the Supreme Courts off. So, and that just seems where it's at.
Probably not. But this is where I think that there's nuance to the topic. So, especially reading Federalist 29 and Federalist 46, I want to say, which are like the two ones that most aggressively address the Second Amendment. It seems to me that the intent of the founding fathers was to, number one, not have a standing army. We obviously fucked that up.
Right. Yeah.
Number two, it was to not have a super aggressive police state. It was like, yeah, sure, we could have cops. Yes, we could have peace officers. But we weren't supposed to have like an Orwellian peace state. And it seemed like they wanted, although we're way past this at this point, they wanted the average person to be capable of not only defending themselves, but responding to civil emergencies.
Yes.
And being able to handle those in a coherent way along with their neighbors.
Yes.
And so what I think is interesting about that is if you look at the skill set that is required. So for instance, you're a race car driver in an analogy to guns. I'm a truck driver in an analogy to guns. And then the average person doesn't know shit about either profession.
Right.
So it seems like the founding fathers wanted most people to be truck drivers, and they wanted whoever wanted to be a race car driver to be a race car driver. And so the question is, what are those fundamental skills and how do we fulfill them both culturally and through technology? And the truth is that we could answer that question a million ways.
Yeah.
Because from me, sorry, just last idea, I promise, even though I'm a yapper. 300 million civilians or 150 million civilians with lever actions and single action revolvers could 100% wipe out a US military of 1 million people with M4s and general purpose machine guns. It's just a question of skill and application.
So I don't really disagree with a ton of that, but I'm going to say that the piece that you're missing is that our founding fathers expected you to either be able to do it yourself or to be able to hire people to do it. That's why there weren't that many police in the back in the olden days, right? It was all there wasn't that much military. It was if you had a farm, you hired 10 guys to make sure nobody stole your cows or raided your fields or burned your corn or whatever it was. And that was just part of being a hand on the farm, or maybe you were hired as a security guy, right? That's where the Pinkertons came from. That's where all of these detective agencies came from back in the 1800s, and even earlier. So I think that's the part that's the disconnect that most people miss. Municipal police just weren't really a thing. And and I don't think our founding fathers thought of that as something we would have to have or deal with. So I don't know how this is where the problem comes in. Because while I agree with you, that you, Counterpoints, should be able to protect your house with your firearm and go to your neighbor and solicit him to help you with his firearm. I agree with that. If you actually did that, the police would come and they would have a long talk with you and doubt your sanity in today's age, right? And there's a very good chance in Florida that you could get shot because the cops down there.
Everybody's jumpy because everybody has a gun.
Because it's Florida, right? I mean, I'm just saying. I'm not trying to find a point on it, but I'm just saying that even as a good, God-fearing, human being,
I would push though. Where I would push you guys, and I would put you in the conservatarian, libertarian camp.
I'm a constitutional conservative, so I'm very much into the idea that we have gone so far outside the Constitution that that's why sanity doesn't apply, and we need to come back, right? We need to bring it back into sanity. Right?
But I think it's a cart and horse problem, where the legislation has become so, and by the way, our founding fathers knew this as well, that effectively there's not a problem that the state won't try to legislate effectively. So what happens is you just build up this code of 1,000 laws that not even anybody knows all of the laws because they're so unwieldy. So our founding fathers knew this before they even established a republic. But the truth is that in order to repeal those laws, let's say that we wanted assault weapons. I wish I could do state issued assault weapons. I wish we had a Swiss model. I wish that when you were 18, you went and you did a 13-week boot camp, and then the state issued you an AR-15 or a G3 or whatever, right? But we don't live in that culture. And the reason why we don't live in that culture, though, is I would say that we talk a lot about rights. We don't talk a lot about responsibility. then the people who are not falling afoul of the law are being relatively responsible. But then the people who are falling afoul of the law, they're taking our rights and then they're abusing them with reckless abandon to the point that the state feels like it needs to step in. And if you'll indulge me another 30 seconds, the drug communities that are in the rough side of town, what they do is they go onto the correct side of town. They burglarize vehicles and houses as long as the day is long, or as long as the day is long. They steal legally acquired firearms. They go back to the rough side of town. They sell it to all their friends. This has gotten worse with 3D printing, by the way, because they can print frames and they can buy parts off of the internet.
Yeah.
Then they take this right, which is firearms ownership, but then they use it in order to forward drug-fueled criminal enterprise, which is absolutely annihilating their fucking communities. Sure. But there's so much money and so much wealth and so much power wrapped up within this criminal enterprise that we haven't been able to break the cycle of organized crime and violence. I'll just say within the Black community, because the Black community has double the homicides that the rest of the population does. We have been so unable to address, it might be more than double because they're literally half of the they're 13% of the population and half of all homicides. So it might even be a factor of 5. Like 5 or 10.
Yeah, somebody did the math on that and it wasn't pretty. I don't remember what it was, but
it's bad.
Did the math on that. Yeah, it's bad. Really bad. No, I agree with you.
It's bad. But then when you say, well, let's get rid of all the guns, then what the wine moms say is not only was there a mass shooting in a movie theater last week, but we lose 20,000 people a year due to 80% of whom are involved in gang violence. So no, we're not deregulating anything because we can't even handle the amount of freedom that we already have.
So I think that there's two things there. Several things, but two I want to touch on right out of the gate. First, there's a difference between a right and an entitlement, right? Sure. And I think that what you referred to as a right, I would say that it's not. It's that people are assuming that they have an entitlement, that they have a and they'll call it a right to X when they actually don't. And if they actually, but we have in our largest, in our very successful society, granted so many of these entitlements that it's hard to walk them back and say, hey, no, guys, sorry, this is wrong now, right? You can't do that. That's why when I say we need to end the welfare state that it helps to keep these people entangled, we need a better system. The welfare state as it exists is horribly flawed and needs to go away. When I say that, people are like, oh my God, that's terrible. You're a horrible person. And I'm like, well, I am a horrible person, but I think I'm right about this. I think I'm right. I think that when you have people who have no real motivation to change anything because they don't see this as something to help them or something as a gift, they see it as an entitlement. It seems that they see it as, I get this no matter what. Then that's when you start, that's the first level of the problem. And then now you add on to it that well, now I don't have anything to do all day because I don't have to go be productive. I don't have to go to work. I don't have to, do anything. Well, let's go buy drugs. Let's go deal in whores. Let's go deal in gambling. Let's do all of these things because why wouldn't I? I have all the time in the world, and I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to worry about eating tonight. I can go out and hit my baby mama up and get some of her food stamps. And why do I care, right? Or whatever they call it now.
Well, which by the way, this is why disentangling these concepts is important for me, because I've been called by the right wing a socialist because I do believe in some level of a welfare state. Mm-hmm. And obviously what happens here is if you socialize anything in order to alleviate human suffering, oftentimes like anti-statist libertarians, they'll actually view that as a moral wrong. It's wrong to collectivize social responsibility, compel wealth from one party to distribute it to another party. That by itself is an immoral act. But
Sure.
I'll tell you the reason why I reject this label is because most socialists, they believe in two things. They believe in workers owning the means of production, which I don't. I think you should be able to create a private enterprise, and whatever you negotiate between employees is up to you.
Yeah,
and then I also don't believe in the decommodification of basic human needs, which is exactly what you just said. I think that food, water, and shelter should be easily accessible, but I think that you should have to be productive, barring, of course, like extreme physical disability, extreme mental disability, extreme whatever. You should have to be some level of socially or economically productive in order to access those things. Because the truth is, if you give me food, water, and shelter, I'm not doing shit. I'm going to wake up and I'm going to pick lint out of my belly button. I'm probably just going to surf around on the internet. I'm just going to do whatever. So if I know that I'm a relatively smart cookie, but having the basics provided to me and being able to entertain myself, I'm going to become 99% less productive, then that's probably just true of human beings in general.
You probably wouldn't become 99% less productive. The thing is that what would happen is if you had your needs met, you would then get bored, and then you would be like, well, what can I do today? Well, let me,
Oh, you might even be counterproductive.
Yeah, you might even be counterproductive. And that's where, and then you look around and you say, hey man, that guy's got a Ferrari. How did he get a Ferrari? Well, he made a bunch of money. He was productive in society. Well, I'm not going to do that, but let me go sell, but I can sell cocaine for 2 weeks.
That was an interesting thing about working as a law enforcement officer. We had a Project X party in Lake County, Florida. And what happened was effectively all the gangs from Orange County and Lake County decided that they were going to have a massive party in Lake County, and they were going to do it at this like strip mall. And so what happened was a place that was probably supposed to hold 500 people ended up attracting like, I don't know, probably 5,000. And so there's cars as far as the eye can see. There's people as far as the eye can see. People are smoking weed and drinking alcohol and getting into fistfights. We actually had like 2 or 3 murders that night that spawned off of that party. But the main guys, the drug captains who were like the center of the party, who showed up with the babes and all that kind of stuff, they all showed up in $250,000 cars. But what was interesting was my supervisor, because he was like, I bet you that shit's rented. And so what was so interesting was I ran 1 or 2 of the plates, and then it comes back to rental services, and they're beautiful cars. I mean, they're Lamborghinis, they're Ferraris, they're whatever. But basically what happened was they dropped $2,000 that night just to flex that they were drug captains who could spend $2,000 in a night. And so that desire for success or wealth or whatever, it's still common even in the most, but it's counterproductive, right? Those wealthy cars are based off of murder and drug trafficking and violence, not off of voluntary exchanges of goods and services.
Right.
But real quick, I just want to say this idea because I think it's important, and I want to introduce it to as many anti-status libertarians as I can. I think that in principle, we are a communitarian species, meaning that we're made up of individuals, but we're also made up of a collective. And so we have to negotiate our relationship between the individuals and the collective. And the most effective way that I've come to justify taxes, not from a moral standpoint, but from a logical standpoint, is that taxes and a minimalist welfare state are a riot tax. You're basically paying the proletarian masses not to chop your head off.
Yeah, I've heard that. I've talked about, a couple of times about that, and while that certainly can be the case. So my on the other side of that, I think that when I talk, so when I look at this from my perspective, right? We did have to some degree taxes, right? Throughout history. But generically, we really didn't have any kind of national level or sometimes even state level taxes. Maybe have a county tax because you're gonna build a road, and that would get voted by the landowners, the people that it affected. And we could get into and we should at some point have an actual on my actual channel, on the other channel, have a conversation about all of the taxation and everything. One of the things I think is really important about keeping the Second Amendment, and we just want to get back to the guns and stuff. So one of the things that I think is really interesting when we talk about how leftist or liberals or anti-gunners or whatever you want to call them, like label, whatever label you want to put on them, so be it, right? Like I do know Democrats that shoot a lot, right, and actually shoot matches with me. We're at peace while we're on the range, right? And what I
ironically enough, yeah.
And to be honest with you, I've never had anybody in at the range really give a shit about your political background. Now, I'm not saying that can't happen. I'm certain that you can go to, you can probably go down the street here, and there'll be some old guy there in overalls that'll be like, you filthy Democrat or something. But my parents were Blue Dog Democrats, and my mom would literally say, "Why does anybody need an Uzi?" And I would respond, "Because they're fun." And right, and I actually made a good bit of money buying and selling NFA items when I was in college. That's one of the ways I paid my way through college, was because I knew I could buy an HK, an MP5, or an HK 53 or 91, and I could buy them, and they were expensive. I could buy one for like at that time, 5 to 7, 8, 10 grand, whatever it was, and I could keep it 6 months, a year, and it'd be worth $5,000 more than I paid for it. And I consider that better investment than stocks,
better than gold,
better return, better than gold, right? Better than gold. And so, well, I certainly agree with
real quick. I'll be very brief. The funny thing is, a Thompson allegedly has more stability in currency than gold compared to what it was sold for in the 1920s to compare to what it sells for now. Yeah. Sorry for the interjection. Just weird history fact.
That's totally cool. So the thing that all right, so when it comes to limits on firearms, I think all of it's a bunch of political pandering. When we look back prior to 1968, you didn't even need serial numbers on firearms. It's always been perfectly legal for someone to make their own firearms. I do all the time. I have many firearms that have no serial numbers because I made them, and that's perfectly legal. And there's, it just seems to be in this. There's a rhetoric that's spun that sets a tone that is really, it's really aggravating to people like myself. That's like, well, that's not true. You are lying, and you are spinning something in a way that is not in any way based in reality. For example, the idea that you could, back a few years ago, there was a guy in Texas, and he was 3D printing AR receivers. He never got it to work. Right, you can't 3D print an AR receiver and have it last more than a few shots because of the buffer tube. That's just the way it works. Now you can do it for 22. You can do it. There's some other things that you can do, but other than that, it's not going to work. Now, if you build a mold, if you 3D print a mold, and you know how to use very specific plastics, and you can put the metal inserts in, and you're a machinist and can make those inserts because nobody sells them, then sure, you can make a polymer lower. I know people that do it. Matter of fact, a friend of mine who will be on the show in a few weeks, hopefully, Russell Fagan, is deeply involved with Cav Arms, who makes the polymer lower. Whom I have a Plum Crazy lower, so we certainly it's possible, but a true plastic lower, just come on, guys, this doesn't work. Now. Obviously, the Glock pistol, you can effectively 3D print a complete Glock pistol with no serialized parts.
Mhm.
You can, I mean, now they're you have to get metal parts from somewhere or make them yourself, but
No, that's what they're doing in the hood. I went on a sorry for interjecting, but I'll be brief. The
Yeah, go ahead.
when we went up to the hood and with Lauren Southern for a gun documentary for Tim Pool, basically that's what the hood kids were doing. Was there was somebody who had a 3D printer in the hood. He was 3D printing all the components for a Glock that was necessary for the Glock, right? Except for like the barrel, the slide, the buffer spring, and all that kind of stuff. And then they were mass ordering the unserialized parts into the community, like third-party manufacturer parts, so they could effectively assemble unlimited Glock pistols. And then not just that, but they were either 3D printing or whatever, but they were doing the switches. So basically what makes it full auto.
Yeah.
And so the
I
reason
don't
why
think you
Baltimore
can actually
PD hated that so
print
much.
that, but you can. It's not a hard piece to make in metal. So
Well, right, but the reason why Baltimore PD was so pissed about it, and they were trying to break up the distribution rings, was because effectively you got somebody with a full auto pistol. They don't like somebody, they just walk up to them, and if they hit them with a semi-auto shot and they're running away and they're not aiming and all that kind of stuff, they're good. Whereas if they walk up to somebody they hit and they just hit him with half a mag from like 3 to 6 feet away, that dude's done. Now it might have been a problem that took care of itself, but it was still a problem.
Yeah. The at any rate, and there's a lot of the Glock switch thing is I got to get into that at some point. It's gonna be hilarious, but
you're like, good idea.
It's a very interesting thing, but at the end of the day, I just think that the political rhetoric around firearms is very interesting to me at this point, because I don't think that there's any way ever that they'll get a national AWB through again. I just think there are too many people. Well, I just think that too many people have them. They're far too in common use. And you've got we're on our third generation of veterans that have served overseas in actual war. And, those guys all love them.
But this is why I'm trying to appeal to you. Well, no, sorry. You finish your idea, but I wanted to.
I'll tell
I
you
have an
something.
idea right there. You finish your idea.
So I have this. When I was in college, one of the things I did was I built firearms. Right, so I would go down to the local gun shop and I would buy like a bolt action Mauser, and I'd bring it home and I'd sporterize it and I'd sell it. And I did that with mostly 96 and 98 large and small ring Mausers. I built some 1911 pistols, and then I in a fit of stupidity, Numerich's had AR-15 kits for sale, and I bought 2 of them. They were cheap. They were dirt cheap, and I put them together. And you have to understand that at that point in time, in like 1990, there were only like 4 manufacturers of ARs in the country, and Colt made 90% of the ARs. Or M16s. And these were basically M16s that had that the lower had been swapped out in. So it was a kit, but it was all like X mil parts or overrun parts or whatever. So these aren't even that great a quality of part, right? Like this is just normal stuff. Well, of course, there wasn't a lot of like super high quality parts. And I put these 2 guns together thinking that they would sell pretty quick. And it took like 2 years to sell those guns, because nobody wanted them. Like nobody cared
about ARs.
About ARs, nobody cared. They would sit I went down to the local gun shop.
Wow,
one of the
talk
local
about a
gun
different
shops
world, huh?
Yeah, the world changed. Like this was like 90. So this was 92, 93 leading into the 94 AWB. In 94, I actually was doing a tabletop FFL. I started the paperwork. I was going to do a tabletop FFL because I was actually building enough firearms at that point that I wanted to legally be able to sell. Also, I wanted to be able to have parts shipped to me. right? So I couldn't do that. I had to go to the gun store and buy from them, and of course, they put their little percentage on it, and I just wanted more profit, right? Like I was just like, hey, I'm making enough of these now, and they were all bolt guns, right? And the in '94, the AWB comes down, and all of a sudden, it went from like nobody cared anything about ARs to like a little bit of interest. And of course, you couldn't buy. It was hard to buy them, and they had to be featureless and all this kind of stuff. So that kind of tabled around until 2004. In 2004, the AWB sunset, and the minute it did, all of a sudden, it was like AR everywhere.
Oh yeah.
And then of course, and all of the other things too, the FALs, the SETMEs, the everything, all of these other firearms that we didn't even know we liked. And literally nobody cared anything at all about AR-15s in 92. Like, I couldn't give that thing away. And
well, they also, it's probably a generational thing, just even observing real quick. The Vietnam generation talked a ton of shit about the AR platform because obviously they had a lot of what would you call that? Teething issues, I suppose, with
absolutely.
they used the wrong ammo and they, you know, they jammed on the battlefield, and there was a rumor that they found like an entire fire team that was wiped out, and they had their like cleaning kits out because they were trying to ram, you know, their clogged rifles. You know, they were trying to like ram the bullets back out of the barrels, and they got slaughtered by the Viet Cong. No idea if any of that's. I mean, I know for a fact that they definitely had mechanical
they had a lot
issues.
of problems. Yeah, they had a lot. Of
problems. But the Vietnam generation fucking despised them.
Yeah.
Until they got better. Until they got better a few years later. And then even with the Cold Warriors, I think that with the A2 and M4, with like the Persian Gulf War and all that kind of stuff, it was viewed largely as like a cheap mass production, technically not the most reliable or durable thing. It was viewed as basically like a cheap hunk of metal that was good at flinging lead. I think the only reason why the ARs got really popular during the War on Terror is, number one, we started using them. Number two, we started using them aggressively, and we realized that like more durable weapons platforms that had better reputations, like AK or FALs or whatever, or even M14s and M1As. The problem with all those platforms is they're 30% heavier, and their ammo is 30% heavier. And so if you're going to carry those bitches for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks, yeah, sure, 30% doesn't sound like that much, you know, when you're not carrying anything. But if you're carrying ammo and weapons for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks, 30% is a fucking lot. And material quality went up substantially as well.
The only reason I ever owned an AK was because the ammo was so cheap. You could buy 1,000-round box for like $100.
Isn't it upsetting? Like the flip flop with like Soviet AKs and Soviet whatever the Mosin Nagants. They used to be, dude. I remember. I don't know if this is still true, but I remember in like the thousands or the late tens, I had friends who were like, "I'm gonna buy a crate of Mosins because I'm buying them in bulk. Each Mosin is $80."
There was actually a guy somewhere near me when I was in, or somewhere near my place in California. Not near me, but and he, because I was on Calguns for a long time, and he ordered 2 crates of Mosin so he could pick the best one for himself and then sell the rest off and make money. And he ended up not really like that. That was like a pipe dream that just kind of sort of materialized. It never. But the interesting thing was, it was Obama shutting down all of the import stuff from Russia that literally, like, you can watch it. Like, there were spam cans like in every store in America. You could go buy Silver Bear, you could go buy whatever big, like 1,000 round, 1,400 round Tula, 1,400 round tins. And then like almost overnight, that stuff was gone, and the price went like sky high. And
thanks, Obama.
Yeah, I didn't really care and I never cared for the AKs anyway. They're very inaccurate. They do jam and they do have problems. It's not like they're super great. and they're just really bad.
Yeah, but
Their accuracy is really bad.
they're reliable for what they are.
They are
right?
reliable for what they are. Yeah, if you just accept
for
the
being
fact
a
that the op
cheap,
rod's going to break and some other shit.
yeah, for a cheap mass production rifle meant
Yeah.
for the proletarian masses to do 200-yard or less shots against government forces and or mass Soviet infantry going up against their Western counterparts, they're good for that.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. And so I never really liked the AK. I had an SKS. I had a Norinco Chinese SKS that I bought out of the crate in Cosmoline in like 1989. No, 90, probably 90. Yeah, somewhere along in there. Like 1990, I bought it at a gun show, wrote a check for it. That was hilarious. I haven't written a check for a gun in a long time, but I wrote a check for $89. And
Yeah.
yeah, it was a really good. I mean, it wasn't, again, not accurate, but it worked. And I think the Chinese made some of the better SKSs. And so it was I never got into those to the Russian guns. I have actually a Draco pistol. I think it's a Draco.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's an AK pistol.
So hold on. I got probably 10 to 15 minutes left just because I have to be available for the kids in 10 to 15.
Yeah.
But number one, I had an amazing time. Number two, I would love to do this again. Number three, I
Yeah.
want to sell you on some things real quick.
Sure.
So the first thing I want to sell you on is, and you're probably already aware of it, but I just want to bring it up because I think it's important, is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So are you familiar with that concept?
I've heard, I'm not as familiar with it as I should be now, but I have heard of it many times.
It's a psychological concept, and who knows if it's really true, but it's basically a pyramid, and the bottom tier is physical, the second tier is security, the third tier is social, the fourth tier is ego, the last tier is self-actualization. And so the argument is that human beings naturally climb up this pyramid of needs, and if they can't solve the bottom ones, then they don't pursue the higher ones. So for instance, like if you can't feed yourself, then you're going to risk getting killed in order to feed yourself.
Yeah.
Right. And then for like physical
That's
needs,
more or less the way I've heard it. Yeah. That's more
yeah, if you can't fulfill your your security needs, let's say that you don't want to be killed, right? Or you want to be financially secure. Well, you're not going to be worried about your friendships as much if you're at threat of being killed. Like you're going to kind of hunker down and focus on what's immediately controllable around you to guarantee your physical safety. And then the social tier is like relationships, family, friends, all that kind of stuff. The next tier is ego, which is like pursuing higher level ambitions. The last one is self-actualization, which is becoming the best human being that you can become. And so the psychological argument is that most people get trapped at physical, security, and social, and they never really get to ego or to self-actualization. And if I think this is kind of true, just observing it, is that let's say that we take a look at the disproportionately poor and oppressed by violence Black community, then yeah, sure, like the basic needs tier is met because they have food, water, and shelter. But then their security needs are constantly under threat because not only do they have to worry about police violence, justified and unjustified, but they also have to worry about community violence, where the drug predators that we were talking about earlier, who kind of profit off of the misery of these communities, they're liable to not just attack each other, but also to attack random civilians.
So I was go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was actually talking about this earlier on another stream. I just popped on for a few minutes, and they were talking about it, about how America is, they're just issues. There's so many issues with America that it's just, it's irredeemable, it's untenable or whatever. They were saying that we've passed this point where we can't be. Where we can't bring it back, right? There's so much debt, there's so much this, there's so much, all this other stuff. And I said, no, that's wrong. If you want to see what that actually looks like, look at a country like Mali, right? Like there's no recovering that country, right? You're not going to just reboot it. You're not going to get all those people on the same page. Partially because of what you're talking about, the hierarchy of needs, but they've devolved to a point that they can only see the need in front of them and they'll never be able to climb the ladder. And so at that point, and it sounds really crazy to say, but I'm going to say it because it is the reality, regardless of that it'll never happen. And the reality is about a half of those people need to go away. Now, whether you want to say that they need to be dead or shoved in the ocean or moved to a different location or whatever you want to say, but those people will never ascend higher than the idea of, I need food today. I need a safe place to sleep tonight. No matter what you do, no matter what you put in that country, they'll and what they'll do is they will put the same people, the same leadership in place over and over and over again, expecting a different result, but never getting it because of they can't get past their point on the hierarchy of needs that you're speaking. I use a slightly different example, but we'll stick with this one. And so what do you do? Obviously, we're not going to go through and go, yeah, you're irredeemable, you're good, like you can't do that, right?
Yeah.
Like that's
fuck you, you're cool, fuck you, I'm out.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So we can't actually do that. So what do you do? And it's interesting because we are in the olden days, it exactly would have been fuck you, you're cool, fuck you. Like it would have been exactly that.
No, arguably that's what the Trump admin did in reference to the PEPFAR and USAID, but I'm interrupting. Please keep going.
Yeah. So what do we actually do is to solve in whether we're talking about our country, which I don't think we're in that much trouble, versus a country like Mali or Chad or any of these other and why, and the reason we should care about that is those countries are the people that we're importing from. And when we import those people in here, they're not leaving that mentality behind. They bring it with them. And so now what we're doing is we're importing someone who can't get past the idea of what I need right now. They can't think ahead. They can't ascend, as you were saying. They can't ascend. Mm-hmm. So that's why that applies to us. So how do we solve these problems? It's very interesting. It's a very interesting take on again, throughout history, the idea has always been, and it seems to be that the case that while it's grotesque and heinous and barbaric, sometimes maybe it was the right thing that they did in history to move to that next evolution. And I don't have an answer for it. I'm just, and I'm not saying it's right,
but I'm a paternalist for two reasons, and I'm a statist in reference to what you're saying. So for instance, what I was going to say, kind of when you were going over this idea, is there really are two options from like a nation state perspective. Nation being the people, state being the government. Mm-hmm. Number one option is don't get involved. Right. Mm-hmm. Let their society burn out as it is, that they'll deal with their own problems, or they won't. And it's not our problem because they're not a part of our tribe. That's option one. Mm-hmm. Option two is paternalism, which is basically like, you guys have fucked up your society. You are incapable of ascending to these higher planes of function. Therefore, we're going to come over and we're going to tell you how to run society. And if you don't run it our way, we're going to imprison you or we're going to shoot you. Right. That's the paternalism. And so I'm a statist and a paternalist, especially when it comes to American affairs, but also arguably when it comes to Central and South American, because like you said, when we have failed states in Central and South America, those problems don't just stay there. Those people don't just get wiped out and then just like, they reset and they build a stronger society. What happens is tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, arguably millions of people flee those failed states. And then who's to say, like you said, I don't think it's as inherent, but who's to say that they don't bring those attitudes that caused the state to fail in the first place into their new country when they're our neighbors? And so with me, the reason why I'm optimistic, but I do value things like public education, I do value college education, I do value law enforcement and state intervention and all that kind of stuff, is because I am descended from an irredeemable barbarian tribe of violent pagan thugs. So I'm Irish. To ask an Englishman about the Irish people 200 years ago, and they would have said they're Catholic pagans, They can't stop having sex. They can't stop having children. They can't, stop eating too much food. They're violent. They're alcoholics. They're pieces of shit. They're never going to learn. And yet, look at the Irish diaspora in America, and most Irishmen are they're not even, you barely even identify as an Irishman as ethnically different than an English person because they're both white. And not only are they both white, Irish people have achieved the higher levels of society. Now, I mean, don't say this in Boston. Maybe in Boston, there's still a bunch of degenerate pieces of shit, but pretty much outside of Boston, everybody else is, all the Irish people who not only made it to Boston, but then made it to the rest of America, they're doing quite well. So I don't have this doomer perspective about the West African or the South African or the Hispanic person, because 200 years ago, people were saying the same shit about my people. And look at me, I'm doing pretty good.
I would say that the difference is that when the Irish came over and they acted the way they did in Ireland, they got shot in the head.
True. They really did. And oftentimes by their own people,
because instead of the Irish didn't come over and get a free house and free free food, free everything. They came over. A lot of them is indentured servants. I'm still listening.
My dog just wants in and they keep scratching. So I'm listening.
No worries. He says like a bat thing. They were a bit wild. Yeah. All right.
But I do want to hit 2 sales points before I leave, and then I probably got to go.
Yeah. No worries.
But the sales point that I want to hit, number one, if I could Jedi mind power you right now, then I would get you to find other well-to-do gun people like your friend who's training the Marines to be more lethal. And I would come up with a curriculum that was targeted at liberals, because I think you mentioned something earlier too, where the Pandora's box, guns are kind of out of the bag, right? Yeah. The chances of an assault weapons ban happening again is very small. Yeah. And so if the cat's out of the bag, then I don't want to consistently hear Gavin Newsom and Kamala Harris and AOC talk about an assault weapons ban for the next 30 or 40 years. It's just going to piss me off. So how about we change the base by having people such as yourself, people like your gun friend, create a curriculum that's designed for liberals to become better acquainted with guns without feeling like they're indulging in gun pornography. And then number 2, my second thing is I also do science fiction weapons. So basically I took a Turkish 12 gauge shotgun. Warhammer 40K is a science fiction game, and the main weapon is a bolter.
We're going to be debating for 40K Friday night. You told me you can't. Oh shit!
Wait. So how familiar with 40K are you?
I am not. I don't know anything about it.
Okay. Yeah, I wish I could make it for Friday. But basically the main assault weapon in 40K is a 20 millimeter rocket assisted grenade launcher that looks like an assault rifle without a stock. And so, like, have you seen the 30 millimeter Barrett launchers?
Yes.
There's like a new 30 millimeter precision launch grenade system rifle that's come out in the past year. And it's basically a Warhammer bolter. So anyways, 12 gauge is 18.53 millimeters. So I took a Turkish shotgun without a stock and I 3D printed a cosmetic exterior. And then I made a bolter from Warhammer 40K, and it's amazing. And then there's also things like Titanfall and Aliens and all these like sci-fi properties that basically the other thing that I want to do, that if one of your rich friends was like, that's amazing, I want to start that business. I basically want to aluminum mill and 3D print cosmetic components to go on top of existing functional firearms in order to make science fiction weapons from popular movies and video games.
Interesting. I actually have a mag-fed 12 gauge shotgun, a couple of them. It looks like an AR. It looks like a big AR.
Yes. So actually, can you share? Can you pull up a YouTube screen real quick, and then can you pull up the YouTube video? I made a bolter. because it's going to be me.
Yeah, I can get you.
And if you want to do the short, or if you do want to do the long form just for the first minute, either way, you'll get to see what I did.
Yeah, give me 1 sec.
And then AK Batusai says, ask Grid if he needs any parts from a large collection of excellent condition Mustang 1965 to 1968 parts.
I don't. I'm actually, so I'm actually out of racing. I say that I'm preparing one car for a friend of mine. I am mostly into airplanes now.
Nice.
Yeah. So I don't really, I do a little bit with, cars just for my own kind of, yeah, there it is. Yeah, I got it. All right. So let's.
And can you share it with the class?
Yeah. Let me just, I just got to move it over here to a different screen like that. And so, there's actually a lot of competition down in your area. I don't know if you know that.
Oh yeah, for sure. The Orange County, I forget what it's called, but it's like $150 a month. But there's like a shooting club, and they got USPSA, they got the CCA, they got Cowboy 3 gun, they got everything. But I just don't, not yet. When I become a YouTube millionaire, then I'll do it.
All right.
Yeah, so just play that first minute.
Do I? Yeah. All right, you got there. It's a long video.
Yeah, I go over the lore of the bolter, and I'm getting an echo for some reason. But I've done a better version of this that has a lot less screws, and it is a lot more technically, or it's a lot more coherently, physically sound. But I made a new updated version that is aesthetically even better than that. But I put 1,000 rounds in that thing before ironically enough, the Turkish shotgun broke before my print did on that model. And but basically it's based on a Rock Island VRF 14, which is on sale from Palmetto State Armory for $250.
Yeah.
So if I had unlimited cash, what I would do is I would buy like a dozen VRF 14s, 3D print the bolter cosmetic case, put it on top, sell it on Gunbroker for $1,000, and then I would roll that into a bunch of other designs.
You mentioned Palmetto State a lot. I was listening to your stream the other day. I was doing some work out at the lake house, and you were talking about Newsom and the speech he made in front of the auditorium full of black people, and have basically called them all R slurs. And
well, no, he said, "I'm just like you.
Yeah.
I'm an idiot."
Yeah. Well, you went a little further than that, which is fine. And then, but one of the things you started talking about, the Palmetto State and how you can go and buy one, send it back if it doesn't shoot well enough for you, and all of that. And that's it. That's an interesting thing. I usually tell people just to build a rifle. Like it's so easy, and then you'll understand how it all works. And it doesn't take any real tools, right, to build. I mean, you need an AR wrench, but that's a good investment. And I've told people to build their own rifle many times, and just buy a complete upper, buy a lower, buy whatever stock you like, and you end up with something that's really neat and really like you. Unfortunately, again, we're not on Kick, so we can't transfer over there and then show, but I've got some. I would have brought my competition rifles up and things like that. And I build a new competition rifle every year.
Next time, I'm excited for next time.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
the building advice is great. I just think that a lot of millennials, I'm a millennial. It feels like I'm young, even though
yeah.
I'm actually getting older. I think a lot of millennials and Zoomers, because the world is so
Mhm.
complicated, they do get intimidated by technical shit. So
Mm.
like breaking something apart and putting it together and all that kind of stuff, you already kind of have to be mechanically minded.
Yeah, I just
And
tell them it's Legos for men.
it is. It is.
Legos for
Yeah,
grown
no, it
men. I mean,
is.
it's so. I mean, it's the same thing. It all just kind of fits together, and you got some pins and stuff, and then once you have
And
one, you want like 10 more.
I think for the right person, that probably is good advice because we actually, I used to work for a place called the Arms Room. It's closed now, but it was on the east side of Orlando. And the Arms Room, they basically built AR kits for like $500 and sold them
Yeah,
for 1,000.
yeah.
And like you said, there's not very much to it. It's like you said, Legos for men. But I think that once again, you kind of just have to have that technical mind, and not a really complex technical mind. You just
Mm.
have to have that interest. Whereas obviously, like Palmetto State Armory, I mean, I shill for them even though they don't pay me. They have sales where they basically have basic bitch like
Mhm,
MMP 15 style clones
mhm.
that are $500, but then they go on sale and they're $379.
Yeah.
And so it's like getting into an AR for 379. Of course, the quality is going to be mixed. Of course, you're probably going to have a shit rifle that you might have to
Mhm.
send back. But if you're scared of getting into firearms, but then you get a $379 rifle and then you shoot it and then you actually get a good quality one, I mean, shit, that's a great way to break into it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I guess that's true. I my point would always be that the cost of the rifle is irrelevant
Hmm.
because the ammo that you put
Spoken like a
through it.
man with money, by the way.
No, bear with me. If you when you're really looking at it, the cost of the rifle is irrelevant because the cost of the ammo you put through the rifle is way more. Way.
Sure. But
And so it's and I was listening to Ben Stager. He's a competition shooter, and he's won a bunch of stuff, and just really, I mean, he's an excellent trainer. And somebody was asking him, is like, don't you feel bad about spending like $4,000 on a gun and then just like beating the crap out of it? And he's like, no, because this like
what it's there
he'll
for.
he'll he'll shoot like 20,000 rounds through it. And he's like, do you know how much I mean, how much cheaper the gun is than the ammo? And that's the same.
Sure.
The same thing is true for like your average AR guy that goes out 5 or 6 times a year, shoots a couple of hundred rounds. By the time you shoot a couple of hundred rounds, each time you go out, even if you're spending, double what you paid for the rifle. And if you're not hitting, that makes it even worse. And so it's almost the cost of the rifle is largely irrelevant. It's just the fact is it's a one-time cost. It's large, but your ammo cost is huge and it's ongoing.
This is probably one of my sins. I've been working class, lower end of middle class my entire life.
Mm.
My parents probably made 200K, 300K a year.
Mm.
The way that I analogize that was I was rich enough to go skiing as a
I heard
kid.
you say that. Yeah.
Yeah, I was not rich enough to get skiing lessons, so I just
Yeah.
fell down the side of the fucking mountain. So I'm already quite privileged to be on the mountain by itself. But
Right.
there's other kids who are just, bunny hopping down the slopes and laughing at me.
Yeah.
Now, so that was my childhood. But as an adult, I've only really made more than $100,000, maybe 2 or 3 times. And then I also have 2 young children and a wife. So making ends meet with a young family like that is kind of tough, especially these days.
Mhm.
And so I just know that if I'm in this situation and I think I'm a smart cookie despite being very dumb in some other areas. If I'm a smart cookie and this is the
Mhm.
financial situation that I'm in and I can barely afford to buy a gun and go shooting once a quarter, then
Mhm.
that's got to be 95% of gun owners. 95% of
Yeah.
gun owners probably spend $500 to $1,500 on a weapon They'd probably shoot it once a quarter. They might clean it once a year. And then they have it in like a easily accessible safe in case somebody breaks it into their house. That's 95% of gun owners. Whereas people who buy a Daniel Defense $2,500 Navy SEAL reproduction rifle and then put 10,000 rounds through it, that's probably the top 1% of gun owners.
Yeah, I can see that point of view, but from my point of view, what I see as the typical gun owner that I see, right, is a guy who generically makes decent money, but not great, right? And he has to weigh every decision. Am I going to, am I going to go to this match this month, or am I and eat ramen all week, or am I going to go have a steak dinner? Like a lot of these guys are in that boat, right?
Sure.
But and so what I see, is guys that will, but most of those guys will, once they have one, they'll buy more, and their training regimen goes up, because instead of a $3 energy drink, instead of going to Starbucks, these guys put their money in ammo, and they're just on the range constantly. So they make those choices, even though they're not actually making that much money. And so, in my case, I grew up dirt poor. I don't think my parents ever made more than about $70,000 a year total between the two of them. Right. And that was and I doubt that. Like, I honestly, like, I'm telling you,
it was a rough 50,000.
The power went on, it wasn't uncommon for the power to be turned off, or the water to be shut off, or, to come home.
Oh, and you're still,
I don't know.
Drinking water out of a hose and having
I did drink water out of
not all the time. You're still alive. Yeah. That's shocking. Okay, sorry. I'm being a little bit of a smart ass, not to you, but to other people.
I know. I understand.
We've been so inculcated that we need everything all the time, that we don't extend,
I agree with that,
dignity and grace to poor people who are struggling to make ends, and we kind of shit on them when they have something shut off. And it's like, listen, motherfucker, 100 years ago, nobody had power.
Right. And so the thing is that people did shit on me for that. I remember, this day, I remember that we used wood heat and nobody else did. And I went to school every day smelling like hickory or whatever we were burned that night. Right. And kids made fun of me. But what that did is it made me try harder, take opportunities that others wouldn't. I ended up going to a military school on a scholarship because I tested in, and I didn't have to pay for it. My parents couldn't pay for it, physically could not. My parents couldn't pay to come visit me. Right. Like, I did, what it instilled in me is that, first of all, I generically think more or less like a poor person. Even though I don't spend like it. So while I say that, I understand that this is a contradiction, right? And I'll edit this part probably out of the video but I mean, my monthly spend right now, my wife and I were talking about it the other day, we probably spend between $20,000 and $25,000 a month. A lot of that's mortgages, right? A lot of that's like mortgage. Like, we probably only spend maybe $8,000 in, like, things that you would think, like food and stuff, right? But a lot of it's mortgages, right? But that money's got to be paid every month. Right?
Or the bank starts to get interested.
The bank starts getting upset. So while I'm more comfortable now being able to, we have this spend every month. I still remember when I was like, my monthly spend total was maybe like $2,000 or $3,000.
Yep.
Total. Right? I remember that. And that was everything all month. And go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I was going to commiserate over that. When I was putting myself through college, I think my monthly bills were $3,000, and I had a car, I had an apartment, my cell phone was turned on, and you know, I was making ends, and then my my mom, I was fighting with my mom because she's like, you know, you can't make $36,000 a year forever, right? And I was like, well, I'm okay. I think I could survive like this. And she's like, nah, you'll see. And then I got married and then I had kids. And then I was like,
Yeah.
oh, 25-year-old Connor was
Right.
so wrong.
Yeah. It's an interesting thing. And so I'll freely admit that I spend a lot of money. There's no real, there's no
If
real,
60% of it is in assets, that's a good, like if you
yeah,
were spending it on consumables. So for instance, like my mom had a surgeon
Mhm.
friend who spent $10,000 a month on wine, okay?
Yeah,
Because he
that's,
was
yeah, I
obsessed
never do that.
with this like $500 a bottle wine, and he would have like
Mhm.
3 bottles a night. So this
Right.
dude was drinking 10 grand. So it's a consumable, so it's disappearing.
Mhm. Yeah.
But if 60%, let's say $8,000 is consumables, it's bills, it's surviving, etc., that's pretty normal. And then let's say another $10,000 to $12,000 is a mortgage. Yeah, sure. Is that a shitload of cash? Absolutely. But if it's an asset, I don't know how you think about this. But if it's an asset that if I die, my next of kin are able to either use that asset or
Mhm.
liquidate that asset
Sure.
in order to get enough cash that they have a good life, that's money well spent.
Right. I think that they're, and I mean, just for me, right? And again, I fully understand the point you made earlier. Most people can't do this, and I absolutely understand that I live in rarefied air, but I worked really, really hard to do that. I retired at 45,
Yeah.
and I have not worked since I'm
How old are you
55.
now?
55. I'll be 55 in April.
Oh shit. A dec a decade. A decade
Decade into my
chilling.
retirement.
Nice.
Yeah.
No, that's admirable. I think the reason why working class stiffs, I'm a stiff LARPer. You know, I LARP as a stiff, but I'm not as
Mhm.
stiff as some other folks. I think the reason why stiffs get pissed though when they hear like, well, I worked hard for my money, so I earned it. I'm sure you did. And by the way, I'm happy for you to
Mhm.
enjoy it. I'm happy that you have won capitalism in our living a life that even kings,
Yeah.
probably medieval kings, couldn't imagine the way that you live your life. But the truth is though, for stiffs, is that for people who don't have the skill or the social aptitude or the intelligence to use their hard work to climb into rarefied atmosphere, then what happens is they work hard and they're fucked, right? It's like both.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, I
And
watched my
so
parents. I watched my brother go through this. My brother's a welder. He makes like
I'm
28 bucks.
sure, yeah,
He makes like 28 bucks an hour. Right. He has a house
which
that,
is great for a working class person.
right. He has a house. The only reason he has a house is because he's willing to work a lot of overtime. Right.
Mhm.
But he, the, I consider his financials very risky. Right.
Mm.
But um, at the same time, I'm sitting here, everything I do, I wake up every single day like, how do I add to my wealth every
Mhm.
single day? And it's like, we bought a lake house. It's not actually on the lake; it's lake adjacent. But we bought one because my wife wanted to spend more time at the lake, and that just seemed like the thing to do. We don't go there, so we Airbnb it out. Like
Mhm.
we spent like one summer doing it, right? And So we Airbnb it out. Now it makes me money. As a matter of fact, the first year I had it, after the 6 months or so that we actually went there, the next 6 months I rented it to someone whose house burned, and they needed a place to stay, so I rented it for double the mortgage, and it paid the entire year's mortgage. I didn't pay a dime on it.
Yeah.
My goal is to not pay a dime out of my own pocket for that house. Matter of fact, none of the properties I currently own, that's not true. I have one that's not rented, but it will be soon. Everything I own pays for itself every month. I'm not taking money out of my pocket to pay those mortgages. Now, it's still part of my monthly spend, but I don't
part
take
of
money out
the
of
part of the conceit, and I do hear kids screaming, and I'm 15 minutes late, so I probably got to run. But I do think that where people do get frustrated or whatever. And by the way, like I consider myself a conservatarian, even though obviously I'm a statist and I'm a paternalist, and I think the state probably should do things that you think are immoral. You probably straight up think that
Yeah,
my
I'm a
worldview based off of the
non-interventionist,
state is immoral.
constitutional conservative. Yeah, so
But
probably.
but what I would say though is that oftentimes what I hear when I hear libertarians and anti-statists and people say, "Oh well, I'm just a Joe Schmo. I'm just an idiot, and I could do it, so anybody could do it." And I hear that,
No,
but
I
I
know.
think
I
it's a
100%.
false.
Not everybody can do it.
I think not trying to accuse you of anything, but I do think that when I hear those phrases, it's false humility. Because the truth is, the people who are capable of making it to your station in life, they're either intelligent, meaning that they're above average intelligence, they're cunning, meaning that they know how to manipulate social situations to their benefit. They have social intelligence out the ass so they can climb into the highest echelons of where they need to be. They're technical. And by the way, I'm not saying they're all of these things, but
Right.
it's
There's some mixture there.
or.
Yeah.
And so that's why they're able to maneuver the system as well as they do. And there's probably some hunger too. To your credit, I think that when you're raised poor, there's a hunger that drives you to the reason why I have to figure this out is because if I don't figure this out, I'm fucked. But then what happens is that mentality, you carry it with you throughout the entirety of your life. And so you can capitalize on every opportunity. Whereas people who are born rich or born comfortable, they don't have that that instinct of I'm fucked if I don't figure it out.
I'll agree with you on that, and I'll add something. So in my case, I have very much felt like that. I'm not lucky. I worked really, really hard. I'm medium smart, but the biggest thing is I was willing to live very, very poor for a very, very long time, even when I made money. Most people, the minute they make money, they just start spending more money. And then they just start spending more money. And then they start spending more money. And every time they improve their life, they just keep spending it. The other thing is that they don't think about other people. At one point in time, I employed 60 people. I was responsible every week for them to be paid. Right. And so I was willing to take on that as a burden, right? Like I was willing to do it. So I don't think that everybody can do it because most people can't even, they can't even talk to their wife or their son or their nephew or their cousin, or whatever, about what kind of job they should get or how they should do this, or even ask for help. Sometimes they would rather ask their neighbor for help than ask their family for help. And so they're not good employers. They're not going to be able to see that side of, hey, you can't do this alone. There's no way that I could make the money that I needed to make alone. So I had to hire people, and I have to be able to make sure those people feel like that at the end of the day, that there's a value to them being employed by me.
Yeah, there's a fair shake. Something that you just said that's really important, and then unfortunately I think I really do just have to disconnect.
You're totally fine.
I've had a blast though. The thing that you said that I think was not culturally encouraged in my generation is being willing to ask for help and not believing that you get there alone. We're kind of raised in this like hustle grind culture where you just have to work really, 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 really hard and keep your blinders on. And then eventually the world is going to recognize you and they're going to reward you with all this bullshit. And I realized that subconsciously I was raised with that mentality and I worked that way for a decade. It did not work. And then realistically, any success that I've had in the past 5 years with social media creation, it's because I attracted really intelligent, talented people who are willing to help me. And then I was able to get over my own ego and ask for their help. And what I'm trying to do now, failingly, but still trying, is I'm trying to get to a place where I generate enough revenue where I can thank those people for their efforts on my behalf in a way that is more than fair. But that takes effort, a fuckload of effort.
Yeah. Well, you also have to be you can't be risk averse. I mean, you have to be able to look at it and go, I'm going to hire this person. And for the first 2 months,
I'm going to make it work.
Yeah. I'm paying for it out of my pocket. And maybe the third month they can actually generate their paycheck. But I'm doing this, and either it's going to work and I'm going to win, or I'm going to fail and I'm going to lose some money. Most people can't afford, or I shouldn't say afford. Most people can't come to terms with the idea that they might lose money. And so they literally will sit there on the brink and be like, I know I should do this, but I've got $20. If I spend the $20 and buy X, and I can make $40, but it's not a sure thing. So I don't do it. So they never do it. And so I have a very unique outlook, and I understand that. A lot of it's the military school aspect of it, of I don't feel regret. I don't feel, I don't whine over my fuck ups. If I fuck up, suck it up, drive on. There's no bullshit. A lot of that is just beaten into me over about 4 years of, being around people that
this will be my last note, and then I'm going to run. Yeah. But the one of the other thing is there's a lot to be said for showing up. I've seen incredibly talented people in the online politisphere come and go, and I know their names. Rose Wrist, charismatic, intelligent, brilliant, excellent debater. Hans of Arkir, charismatic, funny, interesting. Love talking to that guy. Demon Mama, hated her guts, total piece of shit. But she had her own cult of personality, and she was able to throw elbows on a panel debate. And these people have all fallen out of the online politisphere, not because they didn't have sufficient talent in order to make it as content creators, but because they didn't have the persistence to go through the rocky and shitty parts and then keep showing up even though it sucked. And so that's what I would say is the difference between me and them is they had just as much talent as I did, arguably some of them more, in order to succeed in this industry. But they hit a rough patch, they didn't like it, and they backed out. And that's the difference. Yeah. But I am 23 minutes late.
Okay, go do what you need to do. Thank you for coming on the show.
It was a blast. So we'll think about teaching libs about guns, think about sci-fi guns, and think about I forget what the other thing was, but Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And I'll catch you soon.
All right, man. See you later.
Bye, buddy.
Bye. All right. Well, that was pretty good. Wasn't quite the gun prattle that I wanted, but it was still good. We'll probably I'll have to edit that one up a little bit. Anyway, it seems like there was a question I was asked. JJ Beans, the OG. Don't I know you? I feel like I know you. I guess not. But anyway, JJ Beans, I am a constitutional conservative. And I generally consider myself a Republican. So, what's your... And I'm an isolationist. I'm a non-interventionist. That's for sure. That's for sure. Hey, I appreciate everybody in the chat that stayed with us for this one. And it looks like we had a fair turnout on old gun prattle. We could have been a little better. Could have been a little better. Most of you guys are over on An Unreasonable Man. But you guys are certainly, I got to get the numbers up over on gun prattle. So we have to figure that out. Yeah, non-interventionist. That's right. Even though we're intervening like complete assholes in Iran right now, and I honestly can't say anything bad about it. I've got to. I'm going to have to get out of here as well. And I will be back tonight doing the Wednesday night show. We have Modi on tonight, I believe. And it'll be really funny. I gotta jump off. I'll see you guys back. I think we're gonna go live around 8:00, and it'll be awesome. And that will be only on An Unreasonable Man. I have no idea why Kick went all fucking weird today, but I'll look into it. Maybe it'll work better next time, and then we'll be able to show some guns and stuff. In the meantime, as always, be cool and have a great rest of your day. We'll see you.